this is what you want to see right here. This is a vac dog. And actually, with this screw in it, it is a plug dog. And what this screw does is turns on suction and off suction. What this all is part of a vacuum clamping process. What Steve QWAS basically manufactures here are these dogs that are going to come up from the underside through the 20 millimeter holes on your Festool MFT, and then are going to be connected to a manifold that he also sells, and with various lengths of hosing that can do different things for you. Right now, we have this set up so that we have a vacuum pump with a filter, because we're working in a sawdust environment, and that leads into the back hole. There's a single hole to the manifold. That's going to lead in. This tubing fits dead fit. You can get this stuff at Home Depot if you want, if you need extras. There's 3 holes on the top. Right now, we're only going to demonstrate using one of the holes in one of the dogs. So this is a plug dog. It's just a little 4-inch piece, and it's got the screw tightened in. So that's just going to be, basically a dead hole. We've got another hole for our testing, and I'm going to show you guys what type of suction we can actually get. Now, there's other ways that you can use this with different hoses and different vac dogs, and I'm going to show you a little bit about that. But we're going to start off with the one hole. So I'm going to tuck all this. Oh, another thing. Steve's a really smart guy. On this manifold, he put a hole through it, and he put this star knob with this bolt that fits in the MFT slot on the side. So you can slide this in, pull it through, and tighten it. This MFT doesn't have that option because it's custom, but basically it would sit right here and you'd have all your hoses all taken care of for you. But we're just going to tuck it under here for now. This is a shot of the underside of that, and that's what it looks like. That's where the suction is actually going to come from. These are tapered, so they can actually get a really nice fit, and you're going to want to hit that from the bottom and get that up there. So this is actually all on a trigger-actuated foot switch. I'm going to hit this, and it's going to come on. Now, obviously, there's nothing on top of it, so it's just shooting air up in the air. But what we're going to do is we're going to use this stripping. And this stripping is basically a D-shaped weather stripping. There's a bunch of different types of weather stripping that Steve and myself have experimented with. This is one of the smaller ones. Some of the strips I'm going to use later in the demo, the D is a little bit bigger. I think those were like 23/64. I don't know what these are, but it's got the adhesive on the back. You can basically use these a bunch of times before you're going to have to get rid of them. And at Home Depot, you can get 17 feet for about $5. So to replace these isn't going to cost much. So we have a dog in this hole right here. What we're going to want to do is get our stripping as close to all of the next holes that we can without touching it. Obviously, if you go over, it's not going to work. So we are going to secure this piece of melamine, and we're going to use melamine because we're going to see what type of testing we can get here. Melamine is non-porous and it's extremely flat, and this tool right here is going to suck it down to the table, and we're going to see if we can get it off. So basically, I'm going to start my stripping over in this upper corner, and I'm going to bring it down, and then I'm going to make a turn, and then I'm going to bring it down and make a turn. Oh, you know what? I actually want it to be more like that. Let me start that over. So you want to press it down, get it on there real good, and make sure there's no air getting out right there. And now we're going to take this piece of MDF. You want to make sure that it's nice and centered. And you come over here. And now everyone watch the table and watch the material. Did you guys see that?
He's smoking.
I'm gonna let it up. It's still raising up. It's this gauge right here is gonna tell us what we're working with. Now, if you take the gauge and hook it to the hose and run it out of that vacuum pump, 28 inches per square inch of mercury is the most you can get. There's a little pin and the dial comes up and hits that pin. That is the most output that this model right here can give you. Now what that's going to translate to is a 2-to-1 ratio. That's about 14 psi. So you're getting 14 psi out of this little hole. Now as you see in the further demonstrations, I'm going to show you different configurations that you can use. But for a piece of material that's about this size, doing a square like this works just fine. So we're going to put it back down. 28, I'm going to push it a little bit. 28 was going to be the most we could possibly get. We're at about 27 and a half. So through his whole system, only the slightest bit of loss. Wayne, would you like to come up here and try to pull this off the table?
Get a crowbar, Wayne. Get a crowbar.
Get somebody a little older.
I didn't bring my tools.
How sturdy is that, Wayne?
It's pretty solid.
Yeah.
You can lift the whole table off the floor.
Well, what we've been finding, so one thing I'm going to go into right now, in order for this to work, this is an MDF surface and it's super porous and there's going to be air loss in that. So Steve recommended to me that you shellac.
You had 20 square inches, 14 pounds. What is that? That's 280 pounds or something.
I'm not a math major.
Yeah, but that's about what the
answer that question.
That's about what the force is.
But basically, what I did on this model was I bought a very small brush and I bought a 2-inch brush. I took the small brush and I did one coat on the interior of all holes, just one, and then I went back and double coated. Now I used a moisture cured urethane, and I found that that's worked real good, and also the shellac works real well too. Also, what's going to happen is this compresses the stripping so much to the table that it's actually going to bond at some point. So you want this glossed up surface. I actually sanded this down with a 2000 grit after the last coat. So if you feel this, it's super slick and you're not going to have that problem. So we were getting 27 and a half inches of mercury with the melamine, but that's almost cheating because this material is practically made for this. So I'm going to show you some other materials. Here's a piece of plywood, the exact same size. I cut these both on the table saw, same size. This is the stuff that I get at my mill. We're going to put this back on. Now watch the table. You've got significant gap right there. We're going to hit the switch. Now you guys see this right here? This is moisture coming out that's evaporating. So not a problem. It's going to happen. And yeah, one other thing about this pump, there's nothing to do with it. I basically just plugged it in and I got some vacuum pump oil and I put it in there and there's no moving parts or switches. It just basically operates. You don't have to do anything.
It just sucks.
Now with the melamine, it didn't put that. It wasn't putting stuff out after the first second or something.
Okay. So to give you an idea on this gauge, and the gauge, Steve isn't going to tell you that you have to buy the gauge, but the gauge will help you in setting up your initial run and figuring out, making sure that the different things that you want to do with it are possible. Because a lot of this is up to the end user's imagination. Steve has invented this idea and given you a palette, but basically there's infinite numbers of different things that you can do. So I'm going to show you a couple more of those right now, but just, I didn't check it. But so on plywood we're at, see now plywood we're only at 22. You're gonna, it is not as good as melamine, but still, this is on there. So what I'm going to do right now is just real quickly, I'm going to put it like this. I'm going to put it down. I'm going to get this 1010 router out. And I'm going to do I'm going to ease the edges. You can pull this down here. We don't need to see that for the rest of the demonstration. So basically, a little Festool note. What I like to do if I'm going to be easing the edges is you always want to keep this on the interior. So as you're moving this way, you'd want this to be out this angle and this so that you're holding it down. So I'm gonna, as you can see how I do that as I go around. And basically what I want to show you here is that this is holding it so tight that you can route on it and it's not gonna move. You can do routing techniques on this, and basically it's going to hold it down. So you got a nice eased edge on that. Now I'm going to show you a couple different variations that you can do. We're going to get rid of this stripping. And we're going to do a nice big long piece. Now one thing that you want to do, get rid of any dust that's on the table. If you don't want dust there, that could lead to not getting as good of suction. And you want to make sure that your workspace is clear of debris. So what we're going to do, we've got one hose right now. I've got another dog without a plug. And then I have two plug dogs. So we're going to do a longer piece, and we're going to do dog, plug dog, dog, plug dog, dog. And that's going to give us 3 vac dogs clamping down in the furthest amount of space. For each space that you skip one, you've got to basically put this plug dog in there. So I'll show you how I'm going to do that. The first one is going to start right here, so we're going to stick that in and get it up as good as possible. Now, what we'll do is we don't need this plug dog anymore. We'll get rid of that. And this just is a dead fit, slides right in. Now what we want to do is get the vacuum gauge off, and now we're going to actually be using all 3 parts of the manifold. So this one, I'm going to do dog, plug dog, dog, plug dog, dog. So this one's going way over here. Get that in there good. Then you put the plug dog in. This is actually the wrong stripping. This is going to be our longest stripping. We're now going to take this off. Get rid of this. And same thing. We're going to start up in the top. We're going to come all the way down. We're going to come down like this. We're going to come all the way back around and then up like this. Now, do you guys want to come see that? Doesn't even, you know, as long as you don't have an open seal right there, you're good to go. So what I'm going to do now is that I'm going to take this longer piece and I'm going to do some domino edge banding on it. So this piece, we're going to want to get it on there real good. Kick the manifold out of the way, and we're going to drop it. And that's going to compress completely to the table. You can bend the plywood, but as you see when I'm bending it, the areas where the plug dogs and the back dogs are as tight as can be. So, you know, an operation that you might use is to hold this material down. You know, a lot of times I notice that when doing dominoes, that depending on if the piece was narrower than this, sometimes the clamps get in your way. As you're moving down the line, you've got to remove a clamp and do that. So with this system, you just move up. And just infinitely and there you have it. You are not going to need to. You're not going to need to have any clamps. This is going to do all of your clamping, and nothing's going to get in your way. So, one thing that I did some testing with to figure out what this thing was capable of is to see if we could do thin pieces. Now, I found with thin pieces you have to be really careful where you put your stripping. And you need a little bit of assistance with it to make sure that it's going to work out the way you want. And I'll show you. You guys can come a little closer if you'd like. And I'll show you how I do this. Don't all come up at once. So you've got to, now this is a mock face frame piece. This is 1 3/4 inches. So once again, we've got back dog, plug dog, back dog, plug dog. And what we're going to do is we're going to hold our fingers just like this, put a little pressure on it, and suck it down. And I don't know if you want to come try, but you're not going to be able to get this off the table.
Really try?
Yeah, try as hard as you can.
Well, this is your best opportunity because of the low area. Yep.
But look at the size of this guy. He's a football player. See, stick it right back on down there. Stuck.
He knows the surface is.
But basically, look at how much pressure I'm putting on that.
That's good enough to hold a piece
It's
while you're
not
working on
holding.
it.
There's really no woodworking technique that you can't do. Basically, one of the problems with the smaller pieces is see how some of this stripping is actually being shown. It's kind of difficult. And like I said, I tried to get it as close to the holes as I could. But just trying to show you the versatility of the system. A couple things.
Roman wasn't really picking up on that. I was watching him, he was standing on the hose.
Couple things that I wanted to tell you about that Steve wanted me to talk about. He said that the hoses, if you desire, can be epoxied into the manifold if you want. And I haven't figured that out yet. I mean, I see the upside to it, but then you can't really move them around and things. So you can do that. The stripping at Home Depot, I mean, he has strippings from a lot of various places, and all these are different strippings here that he's tried. Yellow ones, black ones, brown ones. Some of them have different things. You guys can come take a look at those. Those all work, definitely. But we found that the best ones that I have personally found were at Home Depot. And like I said, it's not very expensive at all. Well, one thing is Steve's still testing this out, and he's going to have some stuff up on his website, as we speak. And he's going to be selling the kit, which is going to include the dogs, the hoses, the manifolds, and the rubber stripping. Once that runs out, you can just go get your own. Basically actually all this stuff was bought at Harbor Freight, and all of it was, not very expensive at all. And like I said, works just fine.
Is he machining those manifolds, or?
Yes. Yeah. And once again about the vac gauge setup, you don't have to have it. Like I showed you, we're not even using it in this last part. But basically, when you get it set up to make sure that it's running properly and that you're getting the readings that you want to get, I think it was like $14.
What happens if you put it on a table that hasn't been highly polished like that?
You're gonna get much lower readings.
Yeah, but it'll still hold.
I don't.
Yes or no?
The verdict is still out on that, but not really. Not something like this.
Yeah.
There's too much air loss in the MDF itself. Afterwards, I'll take it all apart and we can try it on my MFT table over here and see what readings. I haven't got a chance to do that test yet, but I know Steve has and said, and that's what led him to shellacking, and actually other people, Roman, who I've heard talk about vacuuming, have talked about shellacking too. So I think it's kind of a known thing in the vac clamping industry that the shellac would help the MDF.